Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I am your host, Steve Bisson. I'm an author and mental health counselor. Are you curious about therapy? Do you feel there is a lot of mystery about therapy? Do you wonder what your therapist is doing and why? The goal of this podcast is to make therapy and psychology accessible to all by using real language and straight-to-the-point discussions. This podcast wants to remind you to take care of your mental health, just like you would your physical health. Therapy should not be intimidating. It should be a great way to better health. I will demystify what happens in counseling, discuss topics related to mental health, and discussions you can have with your therapist. I also want to introduce psychology in everyday life, as I feel most of our lives are enmeshed in psychology. I want to introduce the subtle and not so subtle ways psychology plays a factor in our lives. It will be my own mix of thoughts as well as special guests. So join me on this discovery of therapy and psychology. Hi, and welcome to episode 65 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I am Steve B. So if you haven't listened to episode 64, it was the most popular one. It was with Jay Ball and Caitlin D. I hope you go back and listen to it. It was a great interview, and I think there's a reason why it was the most popular. But now for my favorite, and that's episode 65. If you ask me to say for a fact 100% this was my favorite, I would say I guess it was. And the reason why, not because of anything about Susan, but it was such a great conversation with Susan Roggendorf. And we talked about emergency service work. We talked about doing therapy. We talked about feminism. We talked about LGBTQIA plus group. We talked about so many things that are near and dear to my heart. So while I love talking about ES work with Kara and Bill, and love talking to Pat about spirituality, love talking to Lisa in regards to neuroplasticity and spirituality. Stephanie Simpson gave me a great conversation about narratives as well as mind, body, spirit. Loved the trauma conversation with Jill. Carolina brought up so many good things about private practitioners as well as sole proprietors and the pressures they have. Catherine DeMonte and shadow work was amazing. And, you know, I could talk about climbing and how physical health and mental health and doing the two at once is just so helpful, and sobriety and recovery. I mean, I could talk about all those things forever. And that was a great conversation with Rachel, but I had to put my foot down and choose Susan. And I just want you to listen to that and really take into consideration that it was a very tough task. So enjoy the interview. Hi, and welcome to episode 58 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. I am Steve Bisson. If you haven't listened to episode 57 yet, please do so. Stephanie Simpson was very interesting. Talked a lot about informed leadership, her experience with therapy and art therapy. And I thought it was a great conversation. So please go back and listen to that if you haven't done so. But episode 58 will be with Susan Roggendorf. And I hope I got her name right. Susan is a licensed clinical professional counselor in Illinois and a licensed mental health counselor in Iowa. She's the LGBTQ plus owner of Kofeld Counseling Services in the Quad Cities. Susan works with folks living with anxiety in the community as well as first responders. When not in her garden or busy annoying her adult kids, she's hosting and producing her own podcast, Fuck the Rules. I've been on that podcast before, so I'm sure that's going to come up in our conversation, but here is the interview. Hi, and welcome to episode 58 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. It's also a YouTube channel. It's going to be the number 8 episode that's going to be on the YouTube channel. And I'm very happy to have Susan here, Susan Roggendorf. So Susan is someone I've actually listened to her podcast, Fuck the Rules, and I really have enjoyed it. And we connected. She said, I was looking for a guest. She sent me from the sweary therapist that she was going to be a guest. I'm like, oh, that's great. I said, you should listen to Fuck the Rules or something like that. She's like, I think you're missing that I'm the same person. So I'm like, oh, shit. So Susan's someone I really enjoyed listening to. I've obviously followed her on Instagram and everything else. And I will be or have been on their podcast. I don't know.
You will be.
Will be by then. All right, great. So hopefully I'll put that in the show notes too, so you can go listen to my appearance in our Zoom issued infested bullshit that happened again today. So I just think the world's against us, Susan.
Like you said, they're afraid and they should be. We got some great shit.
I think that's why, because we don't fuck around and they don't like that.
Exactly. And if more people thought and did like we did, I think we'll have a lot better place than we are right now. That's for sure.
Well, maybe it's good because now I feel like I know you because we've talked a couple of times now, but it
Mhm.
might be important for my audience here on finding your way through therapy to kind of know you. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Susan Roggendorf. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor in the state of Illinois. I am in private practice now, but I started out doing ER work, doing a crisis clinician through the crisis stabilization unit in the Quad Cities. And that taught me a lot about the nature of therapy, the nature of crisis, the nature of emergency care. I have family and friends who are just about in every area of first responders that I can think of. I mean, whether that's EMS, paramedic, in the ER, in the hospital work, whether they're law enforcement, military. I've been married to military. So it's just, I've pretty much had a lifelong experience exposed to that cohort that I actually provide therapy for too. I'm also queer. I came out when I was 46, 44, something like that. I knew I was queer when I was age of 7, just didn't have a word for it. I just knew I liked girls as much as I liked boys. Then as a teenager, bisexual was the label that was thrown out there.
Right.
I went with that for a long time. But then in my 30s, late 30s, early 40s, I realized I really didn't care about what we call the party favors they're bringing to the party. I just like the person. So whatever tackle box you got, I don't really give a shit. I just want to know you as the person. So then I decided that the real descriptor would be pansexual. So in case anybody's wondering out there, it's always about copper bottoms for me. Okay. I'm just going to put it out there. That means because that's the joke, oh, so you like pants. Yes, the copper bottoms are best. They're of course they're more expensive.
Thank you
So
for explaining that.
that's sort of where I am. I graduated in 2013 with my degree and got licensed. Spent a long time in the ER working with everybody from those that were anxious and depressed to those persons who have made thought about suicide to those who actually attempted and thankfully did not complete to persons that were having active psychosis either through psychological issues and or substance use. So nothing says you've arrived when you're put into basically a headlock and there's being feces thrown around. Just that's not the family gatherings I go to. That was
Yeah, that's
that
that's
was
the ER special, right?
that's right. So, and I will say that now that I am practice full time private practice, I do miss my crew, and I don't miss a lot of the bullshit that went along with the work that we did there. But I will say that my ER crew, especially the overnights that I started out in for several years, they were some of the best people I've ever met. And they were just as black hearted in their humor as I was. So it was a really good crew. And then I finally got burnt to a crisp. I couldn't take any more of the stress, mainly because of the bullshit that was surrounding what we did. And you and I have kind of talked in the past about what that is and just decided that I need to go into private practice. And finally, I just decided that even though everybody says, oh, you're going to have to file for bankruptcy, you can't do private practice on your own, I said, fuck it. And here I am.
Well, I like that your career has been we have parallel careers. I think we talked about this before.
Hmm.
And for me, having the fuck it's about whatever people say, who gives a shit. I feel that from you, and certainly something that we related to. So I think that's why people are afraid because we're told to not do certain things, and we're like, I'll do it twice just to fuck with
Yes, exactly.
you. And so many good things came out of that because I did just your quick intro going into private practice after doing all that stuff. What brought you to private practice other than burnout from ER work? And by the way, it's smearing feces with their names on the wall. That's really my top story from the ER.
Okay, well, we each have a feces story, and yours is probably just as interesting as mine. So, yeah, we'll have to do some comparison later.
I've got jail stories too, so imagine those.
Oh well, you're gonna top me on that because I have not done any kind of jail work. I won't have anything, so you'll win that group of stories. So, but we can compare other
We'll
stories
we'll get
together later.
offline on that because it's got a couple of doozies.
Yeah. So what was the question again? I got lost in the feces stories.
So we know a little bit about you now getting burned out by the ER,
Mhm.
and we can always share that with the audience here who haven't listened to our podcast that I did on
Sure.
yours. But I also think that there must be other reasons why you go into private practice other than just being burnt out.
Well, I think it's because it's not that I didn't like the patients I was working with, but I also wasn't reaching that group of persons I really felt most strongly needed the support, and that is first responders
Right.
and law enforcement, because there are those persons in law enforcement that aren't part of first responder work, like jail, county, prisons, things like that, as well as hospital staff. Hospital staff don't get the support either. And having family and friends and coworkers in all of those fields, I really want to be able to fucking stomp that stigma out, to say that just because you need help doesn't mean you're fucking weak. If anything, it means that you have the courage to say something isn't working. I need to talk to somebody who knows what this can be like or knows what I'm talking about, and I don't have to educate them. I could just go in and say, this is the shit that's going down and I am over it. I can't do this anymore. And I want to be able to break that stigma and say, get your asses into the office. See somebody that can help you get to the next point of getting this, if not taken care of, at least managed well enough so you can go back to your life. And then the LGBTQ plus community that I belong in, we've always needed that kind of support. There are persons that choose not to work with that group, and that's their gig. I'm not going to put them down. Everybody goes into their own niche.
Right.
But I wanted to be there to support persons to continue the work that had started me on the path of being able to be who I was. And that came through therapy as well, with someone who was very affirmative. Wasn't part of the community, but very affirmative, very safe to be around. And I wanted to be a part of that kind of cohort of therapists that could do that for our community. So that's kind of why I got into private practice, aside from the burnout.
Okay. And I certainly hear a lot of different things I want to ask you about. You
Mhm.
said your own therapy, which is always
Yep.
interesting to me because finding your way through therapy is exactly that. I tell people that being in therapy is actually a sign of strength, not a weakness.
Mhm.
What made you reach out to therapy would help the most? And maybe I think the other part that I really find interesting is, I'm Mr. Privilege. I'm a white heterosexual male in this world. I'm getting older, so I'm almost there too for that old part.
Mhm.
But there is never going to be a time where I will not be an ally to our LGBTQIA plus community. Never will I
Mhm.
change that. But I think that how do we also help being getting heterosexuals on board, so to speak? I don't
Mhm.
like the whole Pride Month thing, not because I don't believe in Pride. I believe that Pride is 12 months a year.
Mhm.
If you're attracted, when people tell me that they're gay, I always go like, great, I'm happy for you. But to me, that's not consequential unless it's affected you negatively. And I will do the therapy about that.
Mhm.
But to me, it's like, good for you. I think there's so many questions that come with that. So how do we become an ally? Number one. And number
Mhm.
two, the other thing I would love to hear is more about your experience in therapy and how it changed you. Did it help you get out of the closet, so to speak?
Okay. To speak to the first part, which is becoming an ally, a lot of times you and I find that persons are afraid of things they don't know. And that's hard to believe, even in 2022, that people don't know about what it means to be gay, what it means to be someone who might be now non binary,
Right.
what it means to be gender fluid, and what does it mean to be cis, which is that gender you're assigned at birth. I identify as cis female.
Okay.
I have no problem with the girly jiggly bits. They're part of who I am, and that's just me.
But if someone doesn't know what cis is, can you explain that?
Cis is basically the gender assigned when you're born. It's not your sex. It's, you're seen as female. And I wish I could remember what cis means right now, and I can't come up with the acronym.
Yeah,
I'm
I know
sorry.
there is, and I can't think
Yeah,
of
and
it myself.
menopause brain right now. It just poof, right through the head. But to say that you're cis means that's the gender you were assigned at birth, because that's what was recognized as one binary or the other, either male or female.
Right.
And as we have grown as human beings, we realize that some persons internally do not match what they've been assigned outside. And to be an ally is to be educated. And I'm not talking taking, workshops and diving deep into coursework and things like that. It means reading information from reliable sources. There's the Trevor Project that works with teens.
Yes.
That is hugely important because they provide support for teens who are feeling either caught in environments where they can't express who they are, or they've been victimized because of who they are as teens, basically trying to save lives for teens who are suicidal because they can't get that support as part of our community, LGBTQ+. We've got all kinds of other organizations out there, including like Free Mom Hugs, that talks to parents who may not be in the community themselves, but they have children who are part of that. There's also the Free Dad Hugs, who are part of that organization as well. You'll see persons, including myself, out in different events that are around the LGBTQ+ community wearing shirts that say Free Mom Hugs. Or we have shirts like one of my other shirts that says, if your mother or father doesn't want you, you're my child now.
Right.
And I'm going to be that support for you. I will help you get to that next step of helping you have a healthy life. So you want to get into things like that. Locally, you might have stuff. We have the Project of the Quad Cities here that provides a lot of information. There are now clinics like the LGBTQ+ clinic in Iowa City through the University of Iowa hospitals. So you just have to take a look around locally, depending on where you're at, on what organizations will have the most reliable information. If it's a fringe group that is bent towards one specific view, I do not recommend those, obviously, because the bigger organizations that can recognize as reliable will be able to present you not just the information about LGBTQ+ community, but give you the history of it. And where are we going? How can you support persons, whether you're in the community or not? So to be an ally is to educate yourself. That's number one. Number two, I just think it's about accepting people for being a human being.
Right.
I don't know how fucking else to say that. I mean, I don't care if you're a cis white male. What I care about is, are you a good person? Meaning you're not actively setting out to harm persons because they don't look like you, sound like you, or look like you.
Right.
So what if they don't love like you do? As long as it is not harming anyone,
right?
What's the big deal? And the gay agenda is just to be human. There, I said it. I gave it away. You're going to come take my toaster away now because I gave away the secret.
Finding Your Way Through Therapy exclusive. Please note.
I'm going to lose my toaster.
You're going to lose that gift bag they also gave you.
Oh, I didn't get a gift bag. I just wanted the toaster, and that's what I got. So,
see, Bagley around here in Boston at least gives you a gift bag with that too.
All right, then. I mean, that's the gay agenda. We just want to be accepted as humans. We want rights the same as everybody else does.
Right.
So that's to the first question of being an ally. The second one is about my own therapy. And I am not shy about it. I'm not ashamed of it. I was in my 20s and I was having a really difficult time being a mom.
Right.
I came from trauma and I was having difficulties being a mom. I was having difficulties in my third marriage. I've been married 3 times because, I've got to fit that heteronormative ideal of what it means to be a woman in our society. And I started going to a couple therapists. I did not click. And I talked about this to family, friends, clients, patients, that the first person isn't necessarily going to be the therapist for you, because it's like anything else. It's about meeting with someone that you're going to be comfortable enough to be vulnerable and feel safe to share things you've not said to anyone else.
Right.
For whatever reason. And it was my third try when I finally found Linda Jones. She was through the employee assistance program of the place that I was working at before. They were contracted through a local hospital, community, mental health wellness program. And it's because of Linda that over the course of off and on of about 10 years, there was a lot of shit for me to go through. We would start with one thing, work through it. I would need a fucking break. And then something else would come up and we'd work on that. And it's because of her work and her ability to make me feel safe and heard that I could say things I hadn't been able to say before, which included, I fucking dig chicks as much as I dig dudes. So what does that make me other than bisexual? And is it allowed? And what does that mean to be a mom? And how do I model this for my kid? Or do I model this for my kid? And
right.
Oh my God, what is the fallout for my family when they find out? Do I say anything to my family? It was a lot of pulling things away that had been layered on me as expectations and the idealized perception of who Susan was that I accepted as my own, that I had to pull that shit off of me and see me for who I really was, for myself.
Right.
And I certainly wasn't the sweary, don't give a shit attitude back then that I am now. That's been a work in progress for like 25, 30 years. So it was the best thing I ever fucking did, other than having my kids.
So the don't give a shit attitude is more like 20 to 30 years old now.
It's more like 15 years old. I mean, to really live that I don't give a fuck anymore, that's about 15 years.
Okay.
And especially in the last 5, where I know what, I'm over 50. Fuck you. I'm not dealing with that anymore. Your archaic ideas of how things are supposed to be. No, I'm not doing that. I have so many things to do and such a short time before I take the big old dirt nap. Fuck your shit. I'm not dealing with you. I've got to deal with my own so I can figure out how I can achieve the things I want to do before I drop dead. Right. I got shit to do. Get out of my way.
And you've had to repress who you were for so long too. So there's a lot of shit to catch up, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that you said that I really push on this podcast regularly, and I'm going to say just what you said, and I really appreciate what you said, is that, it took about 3 different tries before finding the right therapist. And I tell people, like, it's not CBT, it's not DBT, it's not whatever fucking type of therapy you think it is. It's the therapeutic alliance that works. Mm-hmm. There's nothing else. And therapy is also something that's messy. I think that a lot of people don't understand that. Also, you're trained in first responders, like both of us were kind of done for a long time. Yeah, that doesn't mean I have a fucking magic wand in the back of my fucking truck.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Oh, look, first responders. Let me get the right magic stick for you.
Just a minute. I've got it in this box. Hang on.
And I think that that's the stuff that I really appreciate. You said you went back and forth with, I can't remember her name, but it sounds like Linda was a great therapist.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
How do you communicate that with your clients today? Because I especially first responders, I love my first responders. That's one of my passions, but a lot of them are looking for the magic wand sometimes. And I know I don't carry it. And if there was one that was taught to me at my college when I was doing this training, I was fucking sick that day or something.
Well, I don't think that any of us get the magic wand during our training, because somebody somewhere has to have had it. And that's one thing that as therapists we like to do, is let other people know this shit works. Try this.
Right.
So nobody has that magic wand. Basically, what I tell my clients, especially my first responders, who I love working with them, and as well as hospital persons and other law enforcement, is that unlike what you see in fucking media, which just perpetuates the stereotype of this aha moment and everything's blissful and they go off in the sunset and everything's great. That's a load of shit.
Right.
In my therapy, things got uncomfortable. Sometimes they were so painful, I would stand up in the middle of a session, tell my therapist, go fuck yourself, and to walk out. I'd come back the next week because I was processing all that. And we found a better way for me to be able to handle those horrible feelings other than saying fuck you and walking out. Sometimes it was just fuck you, and she'd give me 10 minutes to settle down or whatever, and then we continue. And I tell my clients, especially my first responders at all, that you can tell me to fuck off. I'm not going to take it personally. That's a response to me that says we're getting close to something.
Right.
And that if you need space, I will give you that space. And we may not pursue it for the rest of the session, but we will revisit it in a future session. And it's frustrating. It's so fucking frustrating because they have so much to do. And sometimes they're coming in at the direction of their department or their manager or their supervisor, or whatever. Now, I do not have the training to do fit for duty evaluations. I just don't do that. I don't think it's my job to do that. And I leave it to other persons to pick up that duty. So that's one thing that helps ease some of the tension when my first responders come in, knowing that I am not doing a fit for duty, which is a different set of evaluations. Mine is just talking about what the fuck's going on. Why is this not working for you anymore? What happened? And what is it that's getting in your way? And it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to get maybe some really ugly, awful feelings at times, but I'm here. I'm sure shit not going to flinch because believe me, I've been through a lot of shit. But I'm here to keep this space available so they can explore what the fuck is going on.
And I think you said a lot of good things in regards to, for me, when you're in therapy, I have a board in my office. and I think I've shared this on my podcast. We'll share it again because it's a good story. There's a FU board on my wall, and every time someone tells me to fuck off, I go check off the board. If insurance companies are listening, FU stands for follow up, just for the record. But for the rest of you, it means fuck off. And I tell people that's the ultimate compliment you can give me. And I tell them that if you trust me and you tell me to fuck off, that means I got you. And to me, that's not you need 5 minutes to go to the bathroom, calm yourself, whatever. I don't care. We'll do that. But to me, it's the ultimate compliment because that is not a detriment to our relationship. In fact, it helps the relationship. I don't know what you think about that, but.
Well, it shows trust. It shows that there is a point that you've gotten to an area that is so dark and ugly and wiggly and it's shit. And you've been able to ignore it. But now it's in the middle of the room and you have trusted me enough to put it in the middle of the room now. Right. You recognize it for what it is. You tell me to go fuck off. Okay. We'll put the shit in the box. If you want to deal with it later in the session, great. If not, we will address it in a future session. I'm cool with that.
Right.
But for you to tell me to fuck off, to tell me to go fuck yourself, or whatever the fuck phrase of your choice is, it's a trust thing. I know that you've trusted me enough to feel that you can say exactly how you're feeling at that moment, and it's not pre-rehearsed from when you just came in through the door.
I always like the fact that some of my clients are so used to it. They're like, oh, get ready to go put a check mark on your board.
I think I might have board envy. I may have to go do that myself.
Because I like that because it's literally, I have like 3 or 4 clients that literally go, that fucking board on yours is going to get another check mark here. And I'm like, that's great. But they created so much trust and openness to using that language and all that. Because one of the other things that I kind of wanted to, I was thinking about it while we were saying that, a lot of people are afraid of that language. And I think that first responders in particular, that's the language sometimes they can use in order to express very difficult stuff. I certainly see that also in ER people. I see that in last responders with people who work, the medical examiners and the forensic people. I'll never forget my court people either. But do you feel that, that's part of what we need to be more open to and let people have that language and make it comfortable for them?
Absolutely. Because I think part of that issue, and I'm a language nerd about how language develops and how we use it to express ourselves, and that it was one of my studies in my undergrad. And the word "fuck you" is a very aggressive term, and I mean, and it's something that for some people it puts them on the defensive. They don't want to do conflict, but if you come at them with a "fuck you," that's usually a sign that shit's going to go down.
Right.
And in those occupations where shit goes down all the time, that's going to be part of the lexicon. Now, not everybody in those careers has that extensive of a swear language like what we do. Some of them feel perfectly adequate using other terms, and that's fine. But I don't think "fuck you" should be seen as something horrible and taboo. If that's what it takes to help you express how you're truly feeling, and that can be everything from excitement to sexiness to anger, by all means, use it.
Right.
I don't see a problem as long as there's an opportunity to explore that a little bit to find out what that "fuck you" really means. If you don't know what it means, and being able to ask for clarification.
Right. And I think that's sometimes what one of the first responders I've worked with has said to me. Sometimes there's no word. "Fuck you" fits perfectly when you don't even know how to get that word out. It might be 12 words and it's too complicated to get all of that out. So "fuck you" works really well, or "fuck off" or whatever. I tell people that it's always important to find a way to express it, no matter how it is, because if you're going to be so hung up on the word, then you're probably disserving the people that's in front of you.
And there are some people that just don't feel comfortable with it, Steve, and that's okay. If they prefer to have an environment where that's not used, they will attract a certain clientele that feel more comfortable with that therapist, and that's fine. And I've said before that if as a therapist I have a client coming in and they don't feel comfortable swearing, that's cool. I will dump it down and we will just talk, and that's fine.
Right.
I've also had persons who come in, the first words out of their mouth is, "You're not going to fucking get to me." Okay. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but okay. You showed up and you walked through the door and you sat in my chair, so maybe we should talk about why you're here. Not sure what's going on.
You're not going to get me. Okay. Done. What am I supposed to say to that?
Yet you showed up. Let's talk about that.
Right.
I don't think the language should be a barrier. I think it should be utilized in a way that makes the therapist feel comfortable to allow the clients to feel comfortable. If that means you swear, great. If it means you don't swear, fantastic. If it means that you have to use music to help get things across, perfect. If it means you have to use artwork to help express emotions too, that's perfect. The medium of arts is there to help us tell stories. And if that has to happen in session 2, then so be it.
And I think that you bring up another point is that art shows up in different forms. I had a guest a few episodes ago, and the best compliment she said, because she's a singer and is also a coach, and I said, I can't sing. I don't have a voice. I can't sing. She's like, but yet you're on podcast. I don't know, 45 at that point. So your voice is still a gift. And the way you express yourself is probably unique, and that's what people want to hear. And so I think that that's another thing that I've used since then with my clients, saying, this is how you express yourself. And maybe, that may not be everyone's cup of tea. In fact, I hope you're not everyone's cup of tea. But it might also be what someone needed to hear at the right time. And I remind myself of that too.
I think that's a very apt phrase. I mean, your voice has meaning for someone somewhere, not for everybody. And that's okay, because I'm not sure I would want to be accepted by everyone, whatever that term means. I mean, general populace or whatever. I just want to make sure that the persons that I'm reaching understand I'm someone that they can talk to. And if I'm not the therapist for them, I will make sure I get them resources so they can find the most appropriate person.
A little bit of the crisis that we have overall in this country is the lack of therapists. And I don't know if you're finding that in the Quad Cities and in your area, but I know for our area it's been difficult. How do we get more people in the profession, number one, or number two? How do we get more people to engage more clients? I mean, it's very difficult. We also have burnout. We also have issues. So,
well, I think the last response to the first, which is we're so burned out, we are so overloaded. That's why it's hard to find persons to come into the field, because they hear about this and think, well, shit, I don't want to go into something that 5-10 years that I am done with it. I'm moving on to yet another career.
Right.
The other portion of it is fucking insurance companies. Oh my God. Oh my God. I knew you'd get me there, Steve. Just, oh my hell.
Hey, I opened up in your podcast. It's your turn.
Fuck you. Go put it on the board.
It's the studio, but I will get one for the studio now.
It's just that insurance companies started out as a good idea, and now it's just fucked up medical care. It's fucked up a lot of things that has to do with the care and health of human beings in our country. You have companies that one of my guests, Reverend Wish, had talked about, where you order a steak and potato and it's appropriate, and they give you a fucking peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that's what the insurance company says that's the only thing you deserve.
Right.
Fuck you.
Correct.
I have clients that people talk about going into private practice just for cash only. Now, for some persons that works wherever their market is, whatever their niche is. For most of us, we can't do that. In my area, people are heavily insured through the employers here.
Right.
To not take insurance really limits that population that I have found I can't do and make a living, because fat girl likes her tacos and I like a roof over my head. So I'm going to accept some insurances, not be paneled on all of them.
Right.
And so when you have somebody who's a client that pays for their insurance, they want those benefits. But the problem is with insurance companies, people think, oh, my insurance company pays you $145 an hour if that's your rate for 45 minutes. No, that's what I would bill if you were cash. That's what would be appropriate to cover costs of overhead, rent, and everything else I have to do, continuing education, keep my license up, all that other good stuff, and eat my tacos.
Right.
However, if you're going to be paneled with an insurance company, they'll say, yeah, we'll give you $90 for that session. Maybe. Depending on the plan of the client, they may actually only give you $45. Right. And the client won't have a copay. So that's it. You've gone from $145 down to $45, and you're supposed to figure out how to make a living from that. That is what keeps a lot of people out of going into our field of mental health, because not only do you have to figure out how you're going to make ends meet by not getting the amount that you set in order to have a decent living. I'm not talking, I'm sure there are people out there that make loads more money than I do, but not very many, not
Right.
without side stream income. And how do you pay for other things that you're not going to get in being employed by someone else? Like I have to pay for my own insurance. And around here, you're looking at for a single person, $400 to $500 a month, and you have a deductible between $6,000 and $8,000 for a single person. So that also gets in the way. So insurance companies, once again, sucking you. So all of those things are what prevent a lot of people from going into private practice. And then you get old fucks like me who come in and go, you know what? How much worse can it be? I have been poor. I have been on food stamps. I have worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. How much more fucking difficult could this be? And it's something that I don't want to spend whatever time left I have to me burdened with all the paperwork and bullshit of working in an institution or an organization for mental health. When I can go into private practice, I do have to do my paperwork, but it's significantly less than what I had to do in a community health organization. I can spend the majority of my time actually doing therapy with my clients.
Right.
I get to see them on a regular basis and I watch them progress as they work through their therapy. That to me is worth the pain and effort of trying to figure out how to make ends meet as a therapist in private practice, battling with insurance companies, battling with other shit that's coming down, and making sure my clients are taken care of.
Right. And I think that's you hit a lot of things right on, like the nail on the head. I mean, I think that's charging $400 or $500 when you're in New York City for out of pocket is not unheard of, or LA or Chicago and parts of Chicago's anyway. But you go into rural Iowa, or even for us, I mean, I'm in Massachusetts. You go from Boston to Central Mass, it's a different story. And I think that's the other part that the insurance companies have preyed upon us in regards to a lot of this stuff. So I embrace that completely.
Yeah.
Let me shift gears a little bit so that you don't
Sure.
tell me to fuck off too often, because I can go on for insurance companies, but I think I went through it in a very good ranting way on your podcast. So please go listen to that. But I want to go back to a little bit of like, this is being recorded in June. We're going to be released in July. Recently, we had Roe overturned.
Yep.
And there's so many feelings that I have in regards to that. But more importantly, I'm going to go back to a little bit of the LGBTQ community, because you look at what the Chief Justice Clarence Thomas said in regards to looking at to repel other things, including gay marriage. How is, I know that you can't speak for everyone in the LGBTQ community. I'm not that stupid. But how is that affecting different people in the community? Because to me, it's just like we're fucking turning the clocks back so much on so many levels, and it's frustrating. And I'm very sad, actually. But I wanted to know if you had any indication of how it's affecting a lot of different people.
I am fucking furious at this. And it's not enough to have to work for social justice continually in 2022 for my friends and family who are persons of color and come from marginalized communities. But now we've got this, which is bullshit, because no sooner was Roe v. Wade overturned than Thomas comes out and says, oh, and we're going to talk about same-sex marriage, and we're going to talk about contraceptives, and we're also going to talk about privacy in the bedroom.
Right.
So all the supposed straight white persons that are out there thinking this can't come for me, guess what? If you're kinky in the bedroom, they're going to find out, and it's not going to go well for you either. This doesn't stop with just Roe v. Wade. And with the LGBTQ plus community, the problem is we just got some of the basic human rights everybody else was able to enjoy. Now we're looking at the possibility of having it taken away again. What the fuck? This is, what country did I wake up in? I just, there are countries around the world that do not have the benefits that we do living in the United States, that are light years ahead of us in terms of human rights and treating people like human beings. And of course, there are those in our communities, LGBTQ plus, that are worried and scared and afraid. I also work with trans individuals, and I support trans persons and trans rights. I belong to an organization that our death threats have just quadrupled.
Right.
because of the Roe v. Wade overturn. It's like, where the fuck were you parasites that suddenly now it's okay to, suddenly come out of the woodwork and attack us? Nothing has changed other than this overturn. And we're going to fight on that too.
Right.
But now we have to be concerned even more so than normal about physical safety of those of us in the community. That's always been a concern. That's never not been a fucking concern about somebody coming to beat the shit out of us or kill us because we aren't like them.
Right.
Now it's even more so. Now I'm really concerned for my clients, my family, and friends who are part of our community.
The fact that we're now going into private life of people,
mm-hmm.
and to me, that includes abortion, that includes
mm-hmm.
whatever sex you decide to have. I really like, and I mean in the most loving way. I just don't care in the way that people do whatever. Consenting adults, I don't care. I just don't care.
Whatever it is you do. But you know what? Guess what? That's the great thing about being a mature adult is that you can say, that's just not for me. And then you fucking mind your own business.
Right.
Oh, that's a concept. A lot of people that most of the country are fine with. That's why this overturn is so stupid. Most of the country does not want this. From everything I'm reading in reliable news sources, saying the percentage anywhere from 68 to 74% of the country think this is stupid because they want to just mind their own business and live their own lives.
Right. Well, I think that's what logic dictates, right? Unfortunately, we lost logic a long time ago. Unfortunately, when we're trying to regulate people's vaginas, or you don't feel the gender that you're assigned to and you want to change, we'll decide that that's not right or wrong. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I mean this in the caring way, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Hopefully it comes off as what I hope it's coming off, not like I don't care. It's like people's lives are people's lives. And I think that I hate fucking saying this. I do work with people from the LGBTQ community. I always feel like it's one of those things like, oh, I have a black friend. I hate that shit. But a lot of them have been scared since the leak. And I can feel it from that community in the general sense getting worse in the last week or so. How do we work as allies for everyone? Because I know I want to be your ally. I want to be everyone's ally because I truly don't see where this country is going to make any sense of this because abortion is not my business. People's sexual, whatever they decide in life, it's their choice. If they don't feel their gender, again, that's their choice. And there's a lot of complexities that go with that. And I'm not trying to minimize them, but I just don't, that's not for me to decide. That's not for me to control. How do we get to a point where we're kind of educate people around that?
Well, like I said earlier, which is go to those organizations that work with those persons, that support those persons. Mainly, is it about, do you want to put, first of all, where your mouth is? If you have the funds available to do so, donate to those organizations that are supporting the groups that are being targeted.
Right.
The NAACP, I have watched them and I have followed them and I have donated monies to them because, again, family and friends who are persons of color in marginalized communities, I want them to continue having their rights, even though they're jeopardized all the fucking time. Planned Parenthood, again, if there's another organization that's really good to get information from and donate to or be part of their events and protest. The other thing is if people have been hanging back for whatever reason, I don't know, and I'm not going to criticize because I don't know the situation, but get involved with the political system for God's sakes.
Right.
Start educating yourself about who those public representatives are that are supposed to be supportive of your groups and your member of society, just being a human being, making sure there are human rights, making sure there's good health care. Because guess what? Roe v. Wade isn't going to stop at just the abortion issue. It's not going to stop at contraceptives and same-sex marriage and privacy in the bedroom. Pretty soon, they'll start degrading workers' rights.
Right.
Unions weren't always around, folks. And there are a lot of things on the books now that protect workers. There's going to be issues with women's rights that pertain to anything else. I mean, am I going to be allowed to maintain my own business?
Right.
Make a living for myself? Have voting rights? Everything is open now to be targeted. And we have to find ways to safeguard what rights we still have and get those rights back that we've just lost. The first thing to do, again, is go to those organizations that support those communities you want to be an ally with if you're not part of it. Secondly, is start educating yourself in the political system of who's a representative that mirrors the interests and the rights that you want to have protected.
Right.
It's easier now than ever. I mean, for fuck's sake, I'm 55. I remember you used to have to go to the library to get the books, which, by the way, I love the library. I'm not denigrating them at all. But you'd have to go to the libraries. You'd have to go someplace to get the information. You'd have to write or maybe call. Now it's a matter of clicking on the internet, finding that representative's page or congressperson's page, reading about the things that they voted on, why they voted on it. You can text, you can email, you can call, you can still write letters. Those take a little bit longer.
Right.
There's still ways to connect with those representatives that are supposed to be there supporting you. So get involved with that.
I think that's a great idea. And certainly with elections coming up in November for different people, I think that we need to send a strong message in regards to all that.
Absolutely.
So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen next, but it ain't good.
No, I don't expect anything to be good. People keep bringing up Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale. I know it's a series on Hulu, but I read the book when it came out originally in the 80s. Scared the bejesus out of me because it's talking about the very things we're living through. Well, funny enough, Margaret Atwood has said this in multiple interviews since the book came out. She based that book on real life, historical and current events at that time about how rights were taken away because there was a certain sect, a Christian sect, that decided that their way was the only way. And then we had the Republic of Gilead. The problem is people think it's just a work of fiction. It's fictionalized history, meaning that she has brought all this in. And at the time, there was still that shit happening in other countries to women and minorities. What a lot of people don't understand is that what's different between the book and the series, the book, nobody, unless you're white and male, were allowed to have anything to do with any kind of job or position of power in the Republic of Gilead. The series was a little more open. They tried to modernize it a little bit more than what the book had. So here's the thing, folks. This has happened before. It can happen again. We have to get off our asses and start being more active and proactive.
And I think that what you said earlier, I come back to something you said, when you were still young and trying to be heteronormative. We're going back to that. And again, this is just fucked up that we're going back to the 70s and the 60s in the mentality of what you need is a boy and a girl, 2.5 kids, the SUV and the white picket fence. That we're going back to that shit. And to me, that's just the other part that we need to fight continuously, because I still have women who I've been dating for a few years now. Some women like, I don't want any kids. And I'm like, okay, you're not upset? I'm like, it's your choice. What do I care? And they're like, you really, you don't think more or less? No, I don't give a shit. And in a good way. You don't need to fall in everybody else's box. But there's a fear for me that I'm going to have to become like polygamous so I can marry as many gay guys as I can so I can bring them to Canada.
You and your tribe. Okay.
And I it's just weird, but I had that conversation with one of my clients. He's like, you're going to have to like become a polygamist so you can bring us all up to the train on the train. And I'm like, damn, I'm going to have the railroad up to Canada again.
It may be. It may well be. But here's the thing about the heteronormative thing. You can be hetero, but why does it have to be the norm for everyone? If you are hetero, if that's how you identify, go. Powers be with you. As long as you're living the best life you can and you're not hurting yourself or anybody else. Again, as you said, I mean this in all sincerity. I really don't give a shit.
Good.
Because I'm a mature adult where I have my own things to do here and I'm distracted with dealing with my kids and making sure I'm annoying them on a regular basis, taking care of my garden, taking care of my clients. So you go do who you want to do, however you want to do between you, as long as it's consenting, have at it. Right. I don't care. And that's what I'm saying is we're not against being hetero. We're against not being treated like human beings with basic rights.
I've never met someone who happens to be in the LGBTQIA plus community ever say, you know what, we don't like you because you're heterosexual. No, they don't give a shit. And I'm like, yeah, don't take this the wrong way. I don't give a shit about whatever you do in your private life. It's fine with me. What can I do to support you? That's more of what we need to do.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that Roe being overturned is just going to open a can of worms that I just am afraid is going to get worse.
Guess what? The can has been smashed on the fucking highway, dude, because 13 states immediately had trigger laws that said that you're not allowed to have an abortion now. Immediately.
Right.
Fucking immediately. We've got other states that are considering bans or restrictions that have been sitting off to the side for some time now because there had not been any kind of support for it, that are now going to suddenly come on stage to be considered again. You've only got a handful of states, Southwest and West in the United States, that it's still legal to have an abortion.
I mean, the Northeast, we're very lucky in that way. And I'm not going to.
Well, before Roe v. Wade and Casey came down in the courts and it became a federal protected right, 46 states out of the union had illegal abortions. 46.
Yeah.
We're only one more state than then that still allows legal abortion.
Yeah, they're talking about 27.
In 2022.
How that has come about. I mean, there's I don't know how we can always, this is going to be, I'm going to piss off people and I'm fine with that.
Oh, honey, we have pissed off people from the moment we opened our mouths. So
when I go back to the speech, I think it's from the newsroom, and he talks about America not being the best country in the world. Maternal death is one of the worst countries. There's some countries who are less, quote, developed that have better numbers than we do. And then we're looking at women's rights, and we're going to be down there again, too. And we look at our gay rights. And how can we ever say that this country is the best country in the world? Because the opportunity is only for certain people.
Exactly.
I'll get in trouble for saying that, but I don't give a shit.
But you know what? This also opens up the conversation about how do we start putting term limits on the Supreme Court? These people are appointed for life, and there's only 9 of them.
Yeah.
And how can 9 persons have a say over the majority of the country like this? Because we've allowed it to happen. It was built that way, and we never had the opportunity or maybe the motivation to look at things need to change in that direction.
And maybe perhaps also look at term limits for senators and representatives.
Fuck yes. I mean, that's been something I have been on board with since, oh my God, in my 20s, because I thought it was ludicrous. You can be elected ad nauseum.
Right.
What? If you get enough people that pay you enough money to get you into the right elections, or you can redraw your fucking districts, of course you're always going to be in power. Welcome to the Middle Ages. I guess you get to have your fiefdoms.
Yeah, I can't remember what the name of it was when you just redistrict all the time, but it was it's based on a case in Massachusetts, no less. So I can't remember the name of it. But how about we switch? We kind of like go back to something that means a lot to me, which is your podcast. I've listened, like, you know, people say this on their podcast and all that, but I don't say things I don't mean. I listen to your podcast every single time. Can you tell us more about your podcast?
Sure. How much time am I going to be allowed?
I'll go for a walk. I'll go get my coffee. I'm out.
Go get that board.
Oh yeah, I need to get the board.
Go to Home Depot. Get that board.
I can't leave the house though. COVID.
Oh damn it, Steve! Call yourself an ally. Come on, man, up your game. Damn it. My podcast that came about because I was a guest on a couple podcasts. And they allowed me just to be myself. And I thought, God, that's a lot of fun. And I never thought I'd ever get to this point in my life because I really felt I didn't have much to say or put out there.
Right.
So then one day it was about Trans Rights Day. That was an innocent day compared to where we are now. But I wanted to put my voice out there because of persons I care about, people I've worked with, that I want to make sure that they know that I am there and I want to continue working to make sure that they have basic human rights. And I put out an Instagram reel and I felt good doing that. And some of the responses I got some hate mail, whatever, turned it over to the right authorities. Like, fuck you. I've lived through trauma. Who the fuck are you? And that's what I do with all of my hate emails. I turn it over to the authorities like, whatever. But the fact that persons found something in it that gave them hope or made them feel a little more understood or felt like there was one more voice saying, this has to change and I'm going to be there to continue helping find a way to change it because I'm not trans. Doesn't mean that I don't believe in basic human rights for everybody. So that's what started the podcast because Meg Kelly on her podcast, Mental Health Status, it was about saying fuck your rules because I was so burnt out and I just had enough. And it's like, why is this a rule? Well, because it's always been a rule. Fuck your rules. And then I thought, that's going to be my podcast. Fuck the rules. Because that's what I've done for the last 30 years is that I've broken out of all those expectations, you know. And like I said, I'm not an anarchist. I like having a funded police department that protects property and persons. Could there be improvements? Absolutely, for everybody in that regard, right?
Right.
But I also like my roads being repaired. I like municipalities. I like my water and my electricity. And I like the things that keep me safe. And I like environmental protections being put into place because I like clean air and fresh water. And I like being able to have the opportunity to support persons who want to go to either public or private education. I mean, I like all those things. But there are certain rules and traditions that are so archaic and we're just doing it because we've always done it. Nobody's examined it before.
Right.
And there were persons I really admire and respected that aren't doing the same old thing according to whatever rule or law or tradition or whatever and said, fuck the rules. I'm going to do it this way. And yeah, they may have stumbled. They may have had a hard time, but they're getting someplace and they're happier and they're healthier for it. That's why I wanted to start my podcast. And that's, I'm in season 2 now, and I'm just about ready to start dropping season 2 on July 12th. But I am so lucky that there are so many persons like yourself that I hear your podcast. I'm like, fuck yeah. Yeah. That's what we need to be talking about, which is why I wanted you as one of my guests. Because like you, I listen to your podcast and I find out information from you and your guests that you have, which are phenomenal. And I just want to make sure there's more information for persons who are going outside of the expectation that's been layered on them. I talked about that before where I had to peel that off of me because it'd been put on me by others.
Right.
I want people to have that opportunity too, to say, no, I gotta get this off of me because that's not really who I am. That's not who I feel. And if you get that from my podcast and either from me or from my guests that I have on and it resonates with you and you find a resource that allows you to continue to grow as a human being so that you feel better and your life feels healthier to you, so be it.
Well, I like your explanation. I will share with you my favorite podcast that you did was with a former police officer who became he works with the mental health community now.
Oh, Grayson, yes.
Me and names are not friends. You obviously saw that right away when we started recording this. But really, it was so nice to listen to someone who has been there, done that, and looking at it in a different light. And to me, whenever I listen to your podcast, I think you had I want to say your son-in-law on.
It's either Stephen or it was John. John is the mountain climber. Stephen's the scientist.
The scientist.
Yes.
And bringing science into this shit is also very important. And I really like that one. I could go on and on, but this is just from between you and me. I think that what you bring to the table also is that you can be the sweary therapist, fuck the rules, but also have structure, and both can coexist. You don't have to be an anarchist or a socialist. You can be somewhere in between and be able to flex depending on the situation. I love my first responders, my last responders. Do I want them to be more mental health informed? Do I want them to learn how to do things differently? Yes. Do I think that mental health people who work in the police, first responder realm, sheriffs, and all that, do they need to change their fucking attitude a little bit? Yeah, damn right. And yet that's what I do for a living. So I think that for me, you bring that balance of not taking sides that I truly, truly appreciate.
Well, thank you. I try not to. I mean, I'm trying to get as much perspective in there, although I do take sides in the fact that I believe all human beings should have basic human rights. And that includes good health care that's accessible for what's needed, that it's not dictated by a fucking insurance company, that it's not dictated by the government on what you're able to access as a person based on your socioeconomic level. There's so many things that I do take a side in, but the biggest one is that human beings should have basic fucking human rights. Beyond that, I try to bring other persons who have different perspectives from mine to see what they're thinking and what they're doing too.
I'll tell you why I say that's not taking sides. That's just fucking logic, if you ask me. That's not taking any sides. It's like I support LGBT. I don't take a side there. That's just fucking logical to me. You want to help first responders. That's just logical to me. There's not a side to be taken. That's why I said you don't take sides.
I see.
I think that's.
But I also know that there are persons out there that see it as taking sides. Then fine, fuck it, I'm taking a side. I'm taking a side for human beings. There we go.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to a UU church suddenly. Tony, if you're listening, that was for you. So anyway, I wanted to thank you because it's already been an hour. It went by really fast.
Oh my God.
One of the things that I truly enjoyed, Susan, is that we've had a few conversations, we've exchanged. It's always a great conversation. I have a couple of ideas that I would love to have you back on at some point because it would
absolutely. Well, you're going to be coming back onto my podcast, dude. You're not getting away that easy.
I'm not. Believe me, you tell me the day and time. Probably let me get back from this COVID shit, and then we'll go from there. And I got to get that board before we do that. But
that's right.
But I wanted to thank you so much. Other than your podcast, how can people reach you or find you?
You can always go to my website for my business. It's CoFeltCounselingServices.com. And CoFelt is spelled COFFELT. That is my grandmother's maiden name, and that's who I decided to name my business after, was to honor her. She was my caregiver and did a lot of good in the world. I wanted to honor her with that. Another way is finding me on Instagram. I've got 3 accounts. I've got the CoFelt Counseling one. I've got the Sweary Therapist, and I've got Fuck the Rules podcast. And then you can find Fuck the Rules podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Stitcher, a couple of other ones I can't remember right now. I'm menopause brain.
iHeartRadio, I'm sure, and other places.
I think. It's out there. Just Google it. You'll find me.
Well, Susan, I can't tell you how much I appreciated our conversation today, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Steve, for having me again. It was a wonderful conversation.
Well, that concludes episode 65 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. Thank you, Susan Roggendorf. Great conversation. Hope everyone enjoyed it. And this concludes season 5. Now we're going into season 6. And season 6 and episode 66, a lot of continuality there. But it will be Pat Rice and Carrie Keegan. And we are going to have a conversation. It's a continuance of our conversation. Me and Pat actually had a great conversation last season on episode 54. And I think this is going to be a continuation of that conversation because Carrie is joining us. I think that she has written a book, which will be awesome. Talk about her near-death experience, her relationship with life in general, and the spirituality that goes with that. And of course, Pat always has an opinion and always enjoy that. So looking forward to that. Please like, subscribe, or follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for information, educational, and entertainment purposes. If you are struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor or therapist for consultation.